This video made possible by Killer Visual Strategies. Visit killervisualstrategies.com.
All right, so just a little teaser for what's to come. Dave is wearing an article of clothing, maybe not clothing, he's wearing an accessory that we will be talking about a little bit later on in the show. So stick around for that. But first, Dave, I know Amazon has a tradition in starting any new businesses of starting with a press release. Not only do you start with a customer and work backwards, but you start with a press release and work backwards to the product. When you look at the Alexa and Echo businesses today and think back to that original press release that Amazon came up with, that your team came up with, how close are you to the vision that you foresaw there, and how much further do you have to go?
Yeah, I think the product that we shipped about 5 years ago, almost to the day, was very close to what we wrote down. That's not always the case, by the way. Often things ebb and flow. Invention is not on a schedule. Sometimes it takes longer than you would have expected when you wrote it down. But that one was actually pretty good. But the thing to remember is when we did launch Echo and Alexa 5 years ago, it only knew how to do 13 things, and now it can do hundreds of thousands of types of things. So it really has evolved, and I think to me, the idea that has evolved out of it that we probably didn't predict as faithfully is this emergence of ambient computing, this idea that computing could be around you everywhere, not to replace a phone or a personal computer, but to augment it. That is very interesting and has evolved. And one of the things I often think about is, if you'd gone back 5 years ago and we'd been sitting on this stage and we had talked about there would be 100 million plus things out there in people's homes that they didn't know the operating system and they didn't have to think about what app to install. You would have thought I was insane to predict that. But that's in fact what is happening in people's homes every single day. And to me, that is the epiphany, and that is what's changed dramatically. And again, it's not to supplant the phones that we all love and use, but it's different and it has augmented them. And
just in the past few weeks, you've unveiled the next phase of Alexa and Echo, and we have a sense here for just a few of the products that you showed. And in fact, you're wearing one of them right now, the Echo Frames. This is a device that will be available next year. And I wonder, could you give us a sense for where Alexa is now? It seems like you are going much further beyond the smart speaker, out into the world, into devices. Where is Alexa now, and where are you headed with?
Yeah, the two places that the place we focused on for I'd say the first 4 years of the evolution of Alexa had been the home. And the home, from our standpoint, was under-invented. You know, if you thought about how fast invention was happening in your car with automation and sensors, and you thought about how fast your phones have evolved, they've gotten thinner and bigger screens and a lot more sensors and better cameras. In some ways, the home had been ignored, in our opinion. And so what we really concentrated on for the first 4 years with both Fire TV and Alexa integration there, and then Alexa, as you said, in smart speakers, and now things with displays, Echo Show, was to how do we bring the home closer to a first-class citizen. And so, you know, to give you a sense of it, it's, you know, now on any given week, people interact around the world billions of times with Alexa. So that has taken off. That's here, and we're pretty optimistic about its future. But about, I'd say, 12 to 18 months ago, we started getting requests from customers of, well, we love using Alexa, our family loves using Alexa, how can we take it to other different places? And so what you're starting to see us now, either through integrations with automobile manufacturers or some of the new products, Echo Buds or Frames or Loop, which is a ring, we're starting to experiment with what does it mean to have Alexa on the go, and where do customers want that same ambient-like user experience Again, that's different than their phone, but with them out in the world around them. Car is a good example. You don't want to pull out your phone. You don't want to text while you're driving. Please don't do that. And but if you wanted to send a message or you just want to get the weather, you can just ask Alexa and she can respond.
Well, let's use the frames as a case study here.
Yeah.
Can you explain what the technology is? Obviously, others have tried this, most famously or infamously, Google Glass.
Yeah.
What is Amazon doing differently with these frames that you're wearing?
Yep, I think our approach was very different than that, which was to not, I think customers in general have plenty of distractions throughout their day already. We have lots of things to pay attention to. And what we were trying to think about is where are good places on yourself, in this case on frames on your glasses, that you could snack throughout the day on information that would help you. Whether that's asking for a quick calculation on what the tip for lunch is, or sending a quick message while you're walking back to say to your assistant or your loved one that I'm on my way home. Those are very short interactions that if you pull out your phone and you do it, there's more friction there. And so what we have found over time with Alexa in general, and this idea of ambient computing in general, is when we can reduce friction from what is already available today, then customers generally like it. So a good example is the smart home. You walk into a room and say, Alexa, turn on the lights. To do that from your smartphone or from your computer is actually pretty hard. By the time you pull it out, unlock it, get to the app, get to this part of the app where the switch is, your loved one's saying, get off the couch and just use the switch. It's pretty good. And so for us, but being able to say, Alexa, turn on the lights, it's super easy to be able to do that. And as you walk around with something like frames, you find lots of daily interactions that are simple, short snacks that are delightful.
So as you've been wearing them around, what are some examples of things that you've done? And how is it working? It's connecting to your phone.
Yeah, it tethers through my phone. So the phone is, it's on my plan, my data plan. And basically it doesn't have any display in it. So it's not about a display. There's a little light to tell you when Alexa hears her name. By the way, I have it muted now. She's not waking up every time I'm saying Alexa. And it has prescription lenses in it. So I wear a prescription, so it's in my prescription. And we used directional microphones with some bone conduction too, so that when we tested it over there, you heard that when I asked for something like, what time is it, you would not hear it. You might hear a little buzz if it was a perfectly quiet room, but generally you won't hear it. And so it's not about a camera or a display. It's about just giving me a little bit of information. And so what do I use it for? I use it for messaging as one of them. So as a text message, you basically set up trusted communication partners, a VIP list, if you will. And a few things are on my white list, my wife, my boss. And if those come through, I just swipe and I can hear them, or I can have them automatically barge in. So that's a very delightful thing. When I'm driving home, I'm on the east side. When I cross over the bridge, it's just become habit for me just to say, make an announcement, Alexa, make an announcement, and I say, I'm on my way home, and then all the echoes in my home broadcast that out so my kids know I'm on my way home so they can act like they're doing the homework. And I wish that was a joke. And in addition, my wife can know that I'm on my way home too. So there's utility. And by the way, I think as Alexa gets mobile, I think we're just cracking the surface of the utility. We'll find other types of skills to add. Skills are like the equivalent of things Alexa knows how to do. And developers will now, because we have a developer program and hundreds of thousands of skills, 100,000 plus skills that developers have written, they'll figure out utility for something like this as well.
Let's talk about privacy. You opened your recent product unveiling with an extensive discussion of privacy. Clearly, this is top of mind, not only for many people who use Alexa and other smart assistants, but also for the industry. Amazon and other companies were caught up in controversy this year when reports emerged that humans were reviewing audio recordings from a variety of voice assistants without the knowledge generally of the customers. What have you and your team at Amazon learned from the customer reaction to those revelations, and how are those reactions shaping what you're doing now?
Well, the first thing that you want to do when you hear the response from customers is fix the issue, and so we were, it's not always perfect in these areas, but we were ready with the feature within 24 hours to give customers the ability to opt out of human annotation. So I think we were the first to be able to offer that, and at the same time we did that, we also clarified our terms of service and the messaging we have within our privacy hub. We have a central location for Alexa where you go for all things privacy, to be very clear that we were doing that. If I could go back in time, that would be the thing I would do better. I would have been more transparent about why and when we are using human annotation. The fact of the matter is that's a well-known thing in the industry of AI, at least, whether it was well-known amongst press or customers. That's pretty clear that we weren't good enough there. But it's not just speech. Speech is one area that humans are annotating, but your maps, people are annotating the routes you take. With permission, your medical records to make AI better for X-rays are getting annotated. The state of the art of AI is in such a place today that human annotation is still required. I imagine a future, and I believe it will happen, and if you read the latest research papers on where AI is going, there will be a day where combinations of federated learning and unsupervised learning and transfer learning and algorithms yet not invented will alleviate the need for human annotation and ground truthing, but that day we don't believe is today.
As you said, you were the first to offer customers the option to opt out of human review of voice recordings, but Apple actually then later went a step further and said, by default, that will not be in place. Humans will not review your recordings. Customers can opt in. Why not go that further step?
Yeah, we also added a feature that allowed customers to turn on auto deletion too. So we added those two things at about the same time, about a month apart. And we sat around the room and talked about the difference between opt-in and opt-out. And it's important, the first foundational thing, and I know people don't always believe this, but we don't want data for data's sake at Amazon. And I've been there 9 years. I can assure you this is the case. We want to use data where we can actually improve the experience on behalf of the customer. And so we got in a room, had exactly that debate, and in many, many examples, and I can give you a couple if you're interested, the data that we do annotate, and it's a small fraction of 1%, by the way, is incredibly important to making Alexa and the service better. I'll give you one example, which is we just launched 2 weeks ago in India with a new language, Hindi. And we know within the first 90 days of a launch with the annotations help and other algorithmic efforts that we do, that the accuracy of Alexa in Hindi will be 30 to 35% better. And so you sit around that table and you go, well, would we want to keep that improvement from the customer and not make it 35% better? The answer is no. I want that improvement to get customers. And you do need a corpus of data that's broad enough from all sorts of different geographies and demographics to make that advancement. And so that's where we landed. I don't know how other companies are planning on doing it. Better questions for them.
Should there be, though, a broad industry principle ethics that you would use either inside the company or across the industry to guide those decisions so you're not making them on an ad hoc basis where the rubber meets the road between technology improvements and consumer privacy?
I certainly think that there is room for regulation in lots of areas of places that we are in today. I think, and we've been very public about that. I think around AI ethics and AI, there's a broad room for regulation, whether that's through policy or laws themselves. I think that's a good question for us to debate. I think secondarily around privacy, there's all sorts of good rooms for regulation as well. I don't agree with every nuance of the law, but GDPR, which is Europeans' effort to add more stringent privacy policies, on balance is very, very good. There's some, and then the things that aren't necessarily good, Somebody doesn't agree. That's okay. That's
I
a
think
good
they're-
debate.
No, they're playing golf out there.
Oh, they are. Okay. And so, but on balance, I think it's very, very good. Where it's probably not is where it's just ambiguous. The problem is sometimes there's gray areas, and then you don't know how to write code, and you want it to be clear regulation wherever possible. But so I think in both those places, there's a lot of room for regulation, and we're open to that for sure.
So take this spread of Alexa one or two steps further to the extent that you can. Where does Alexa end up?
I think that I think it could be everywhere. I mean, and whether it's not just Alexa, I think generally this idea of an ambient computer interface, our long-term North Star, super far out vision is the Star Trek computer. You were anywhere on the, pick your enterprise of choice, and you could ask that computer with the word computer or a tap, and it would wake up and it knew the answer to everything. It was never stumped. And somehow couldn't get the countdown to 0, but other than that, it was never stumped. And so it was pretty impressive, and we want to try to do that. And the surface area of that vision is incredibly broad, lots to do. But I'd say the things in the near term that we're going to be working on are twofold. One, today, for those of you that interact with Alexa, the interaction is very transactional. You say Alexa X, and hopefully she will respond in the right way with Y. But that's not how we would talk if we're out in the lobby out here. We would talk in a conversational nature. And so we're doing a lot of work to try to advance the level of science to make Alexa more conversational. We announced Alexa Conversations earlier this year, and then just at our launch event, we talked about a doorbell concierge that could be conversational at your doorbell if you had a Ring doorbell. And so those are things that I think you'll see a lot of advancement over the next couple years, well before we get to the Star Trek computer. And then I think the second area that you'll see us make a lot of progress over the coming years, but noticeable progress, is the idea that an assistant or this voice assistant, this ambient user interface, can be much more proactive on your behalf. When you are most delighted in your life, if you happen to have an assistant or you have a partner that knows you really well, it's when they're proactive on your behalf. You're stuck in an airport somewhere halfway across the world, your plane was canceled, but you're already rebooked on the very next flight and you don't have to do anything. That is like, there's no better feeling in your life when that happens on your behalf. And there's millions of examples of how assistants can help us with that in our daily lives. And so we invent things like something we call Alexa Hunches, which is every night millions of people say goodnight to Alexa. It's just they want a conversation with Alexa. They'll say goodnight, Alexa. And so we knew that we see that, but we also can get sort of telemetry on your house over time. And if 7 weeks in a row, every night you turned off your porch light, and on that 8th week, on that Monday, you say, Alexa, good night, and we recognize that porch light is on, she might come back with a hunch and say, hey, I realized you left your light on, would you like me to turn it off on your behalf? And that idea of being proactive is very powerful, and you'll see us do a lot of work there.
So I should say, you're already getting there to some extent. One of the things that you announced at your recent unveiling was frustration detection.
Yeah.
So Alexa has enough empathy to know that you're saying, damn it, Alexa, that's not what I said, and she can respond accordingly.
Yeah, and it's important, you characterized it exactly right, which is frustration with her or the assistant,
right.
Not with anybody around you.
Not
We're
with
not
your kids,
not with your
doing
kids.
their homework.
We're not detecting any of that. Only when you're talking
Okay.
Specifically to Alexa. But we see a lot of friction in that area, which is people will try to correct themselves 3 or 4 times, and when they do, we can fix that. That is, human beings can fix it, so we can fix that. So if you raise your voice or you might use an expletive or or a tone, we can respond accordingly.
Beyond the voice assistant, one of the most interesting aspects of some of your most recent announcements have been network announcements. Amazon's Project Kuiper satellite broadband network, which I know you've been involved with.
Yeah.
Amazon's Sidewalk, which is a new medium-range wireless mesh network for IoT devices in the front yard and around the neighborhood. Why is it important for the company to develop its own wireless networks?
Yeah. I think that there are lots of places on Earth that are incredibly well served by wireless. But when you map it out, and we have done this pretty carefully, is there are lots of blank spots. And by the way, immediately your mind goes, oh, well, there's a big blank spot in sub-Saharan Africa. You don't have to go that far. You just have to go to Eastern Washington, and you can find lots of areas where connectivity is very difficult to get at. And if they do have connectivity, it's not the connectivity that we're now beginning to take for granted. It's running off of legacy copper in many cases, or off satellite systems because of constraints just in how to get things to space have very long latency and lower bandwidth. And so if you think about Amazon, and what we want to do in the future is we want everybody connected. It's good for society, and B, it's also will be good for Amazon. We can, obviously more people can shop, which we like, and more people can get access to things like Alexa, and more developers can get access to things like AWS. So connectivity is kind of a primitive, first and foremost, but it's also, it's getting close to a human right. It's just if you were writing a new Bill of Rights today, you might put connectivity in it. It's close to that. And so we want to try, and some things, lots of things small companies can do. They just can't. They're nimble and they're in a garage and they can invent super fast. There's some things that bigger companies, it's on our shoulders to solve. And this is an example of one of those, which is, to solve that connectivity problem. Sidewalk's a little different, but on a global basis, we're going to have to put 3,236 satellites up. And that's going to take billions and billions of dollars of capital. And by the way, it's high risk. We got a lot of invention ahead of us. But I like that we're willing to take on the responsibility of trying to do that. I think we can also turn it into a good business. That's not lost on us. But I think when you can get the overlap of the Venn diagrams of good businesses with greater good, those are the things you want to work on in life. Kindle was that way for me. That's why I came to Amazon. If we can help with literacy and reading in the world and also turn it into a pretty good business, that's a good job to have.
It's good that you mentioned Kindle, because I do want to ask, when you look at Kindle, you never really faced a serious challenge from another big tech company. And I realize Barnes & Noble would take issue that it wasn't a serious challenge, but in reality, the Nook didn't stand a chance. And I'll say that so you don't have to. So what is different now for you in this extremely competitive landscape where you're going up against two other largely giant tech companies in Apple and Google?
Yeah, I just don't love revisionist history. So I would argue Sony in the reader space was a very credible alternative for customers too. And I've got great respect for Sony. So, and they built great readers.
Very true.
But nevertheless, as much as it makes good headlines, I would argue that there's not going to be one winner. It is not this idea of, call it a horizontal ambient interface. It's not a sporting event. There's not going to be the person that only gets the gold medal and everybody else is first loser and beyond. There will be multiple winners here. There will be multiple winners when you overlay it over geography, for sure, and there will be multiple winners in even people's homes. The nature of your home, unlike the phone that's in your pocket, unless you have two phones, it is by nature homogeneous. Your home is not homogeneous. It's a cluster of lots of different pieces of technology, and I think the same thing is likely true, that it is not going to be just one ambient assistant that's valuable for customers. And that's why we want to give ingress to multiple. We want multiple wake words, so you can talk to Siri at the same easy that you can talk to Alexa. Do I think Alexa is likely to be one of them in the home especially, and likely in the car? Yes, I'm very optimistic about that.
And to that end, you've announced the Voice Interoperability Initiative, and you've been able to get folks like Microsoft and Salesforce on board with that, but not yet Apple and Google. Do you have any hope that they might join in that initiative?
Yeah, we have strong conviction that customers want to talk to multiple assistants at the same time. and I hope over time that they would join as well.
Okay. So Jeff Bezos is famous for saying that you need to not only learn from your successes, but really even more learn from your failures.
Yeah.
So I want to show you this picture right here.
Yep.
You were here during this era.
Oh, yeah.
What did you learn?
Right in the front row.
What did you learn from the Fire Phone? How did it change what Amazon does? And would you be in the same place with the Alexa and Echo businesses today had this been a runaway success?
There's 3 different questions.
It is.
I would say that, first of all, and I'll even paraphrase Jeff a little bit on this, which is, I can assure you that we have even bigger failures on the bench in our labs right now than that. You just don't know them yet, or they're already out there and they haven't failed yet. The nature, this is one of the things I love about working for Amazon, which is that we do not punish failure. If everything was a success, they wouldn't be experiments. They'd be proofs. It's like mathematically, you'd know the result. And so as a company like Amazon, if we want to be a federation of builders, which is what we think we are, and we want to invent, we have to be willing to take risks. And as the company gets larger, those risks have to get bigger and bigger because we have to be making bigger bets to make sure that we're building on behalf of customers in the right way. So am I happy that the Fire Phone didn't succeed? No, I would much rather it be a success. And do I think Alexa would be in more places? Probably. But at the same time, am I disappointed that we tried? No. Like at basically the exact same time we launched Fire Phone, we also launched Echo. And I can tell you that months before we launched both of those, I had lines of people outside of my office for one-on-ones saying, don't launch a Fire Phone. No customer or developer is going to care about this idea of 4-corner cameras and making the screen bigger, holistically. Okay, but I also had an equal number of people standing outside of my office saying, oh, do not launch this cylindrical device with microphones on it. Nobody's ever going to put that in their home and think about talking to something that way. And if you went with the skeptics, you would have canceled both projects. But the right answer is to lean into both and accept the failure and learn from it. And so what did we learn? We learned that that market segment, which is phones, was well served by that point in time. And the differentiation that we put our chips on, making the screen virtually a little bigger, the idea that you could, some of this is coming true now, so some of this might be timing too, where you could point the camera at anything and it would identify that thing, sort of our early version of what you see in some phones today. Didn't resonate with customers and also with developers, but that's okay. We go back to the drawing board, we got lots of ideas, we'll continue to invent.
Dave, I have to say, this is the first time I've ever talked with an Amazon executive for a half an hour and they did not bring up the leadership principles. I got to congratulate you.
They were embedded somewhere.
They were embedded, it's very, very good. What message would you like to leave this group with about how they can engage with Amazon, not only as consumers, but in many cases as startups, people building new technologies, new innovations? What message would you leave this crowd with?
And you don't want me to say read 14 leadership principles, obviously. So no, I would say that Amazon is a group of a lot of different groups. And so I think the key is to identify where within Amazon you intersect, and maybe
with
multiple
group,
points.
yeah.
But with my group, I think for us, it's about developers specifically. So if you're interested in our security kinds of products, Ring and other things, then we have developer APIs there, Alexa Guard. If you're interested in Alexa, we have developer APIs in and around Alexa, around skills and building other pieces of hardware that have Alexa enabled in it. And if it's Fire TV, which is also a very big part of the business, there's now somewhere in the neighborhood of 37 million active customers using Fire TV every month, that's a good place also that we have developer APIs that you can build applications for Fire TV and get to customers in their living rooms. So those are 3 very important intersection points within my organization.
And big picture, what is the reason that they should engage with Amazon as opposed to other folks?
Obviously everybody has a choice, but to me, I think that we take such a customer-centric first point of view that if you are trying to find a path to customers where it really is based on what they're asking for. And we do wake up every day and listen to what they say. Then working with Amazon is a great way to extend your reach to customers.
Well, I know we've just scratched the surface, but I very much appreciate you being here, Dave, and looking forward to continuing to cover what you and your team are doing. Please give a warm thank you to Dave Limp from Amazon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
the time.
Yeah, absolutely.